So the year is finally over, and I think we could all agree this has been a pretty great one for music, but not in the way we expected it to be. I want to say the mainstream artists were kind of lacking this year. Most of the standout projects from 2021 are coming from either experienced yet underground music veterans or rising stars who've only been working for a few years. Anyway, let's get into my list, but don't forget, this is just my list. I'm a 22-year-old white guy in New York City who mostly listens to hip hop, so I might miss your favorite album, but that's okay because if there's something you think I should hear, my DMs are always open for suggestions. Number 50 is Solar Power by Lorde. Solar Power definitely wasn't what I wanted to hear from Lorde after being a huge fan of her music since high school, but it was still a great album, just way smaller in scope and sound than her previous work. Number 49, Sincerely Contrell by Youngboy. Youngboy is a legitimately great singer, and he's only getting more and more self-aware and thoughtful as he gets older. Contrell has a lot of powerful moments, even if it's a bit long. Number 48 is Collapsed in Sunbeams by Arlo Parks. This is a fun and friendly album that I didn't really expect to like, but ended up loving. It's soft, easygoing, a comfortable listen that I'll probably come back to as much as I can. Number 47 is Ho Tales by Jasmine Sullivan. Ho Tales is an album of female fantasy and empowerment, but even if you're not interested in that perspective, the R&B production is good enough to check out just for the sake of good music. Number 46 is Carnage by Nick Cave and Warren Ellis. Carnage is a dark, ghostly album full of big mixing and mythical imagery, like a musical interpretation of a David Lynch movie. It's worth checking out if you like harsher, darker, discordant instrumentals and themes of apocalyptic Americana. Number 45 is Fatigue by L. Rain. Fatigue is a graceful album. It's thoughtful, even if it's short, it just doesn't rush. It's a beautiful indie pop, funk, folky type project from a Brooklyn artist. It has a huge focus on sound and tone. Number 44 is Navy's Reprise and Song of Sage by Navy Blue. This duo of albums features some of the most beautiful abstract hip-hop beats I've ever heard. Think the jazziness and flows from Faces by Mac Miller meets New York and Earl Sweatshirt. Number 43 is A Softer Focus by Claire Rouzet. It's an instrumental album full of dreamlike sequences featuring faraway sound bites and warm, fuzzy drones and strings, gently bringing you deep into your memories and taking us to a place where we can appreciate the human experience for its long and complicated series of emotions, mostly in between happy and sad. Number 42 is Space 1.8 by Nala Sonefro. Space 1.8 is an impeccably produced album that, on first listen, sounds like a mix of post-rock talk, John Coltrane, and a synth nerd in a bad mood. It's definitely a more muted, subtle album, but don't get me wrong, it's interesting the whole way through, like a Nintendo soundtrack for hipsters. Number 41 is Shade by Grouper. A Grouper's music most often sounds like it's coming through a demonically possessed gramophone that someone pulled out of an abandoned castle. That ghostly disconnect between singer and listener somehow lends itself to an appreciation for her voice and words, as faint and far as they can be. Number 40 is Trip at Night by Trippie Redd. I'll always be a Trippie fan, but it's been hard to defend him since he hasn't really been able to match half the greatness of Life's a Trip from 3 or 4 years back. But from the hyperpop beats to the amazing features from Babyface Ray, Cardi, Drake, and Polo and Dirk, it ended up being Trippie's best work in years. Number 39 is Jubilee by Japanese Breakfast. To me, this album tells the story of intentionally turning from the darkness in your heart and choosing to be happy and what that journey can feel like. It's got a great narrative with beautiful instrumentals and lots of moving moments. Number 38 is Yellow Tape 2 by Key Glock. Yellow Tape 2 is a gritty album from one of the most lonely rappers in the game, but it's still fun. Key Glock is definitely in his own lane, and I really like the sound he's got going. Yellow Tape 2 is the perfect mixtape to just speed down the highway to, non-stop energy. 37, Vulture Prince by Arouge Aftab. Vulture Prince is an insanely beautiful record full of harp, upright bass, acoustic guitar, and violin instrumentals. Plus, Arouge Aftab has a beautiful voice. It's a dark, instrumental record with a nearly ambient atmosphere, and I love listening to it. Imagine 2020's Joanna Newsom. Number 36 is Juno by Remy Wolf. I've been following Remy Wolf for a while now. Her music is very colorful, heavily stylized, and energetic. Lots of funny moments, punchlines, slap bass, retro vibes, and chanted choruses. She's got a big future in the industry and an even bigger personality. Number 35 is The Life of PR5 by Pierre Bourne. Pierre Bourne is a hugely influential producer. He's had such a hand in making hip-hop sound the way it does today, and Life of PR5 was definitely one of the most fun rap albums in a year full of dark, conceptual projects. Sometimes you just want to hear a more lighthearted, fun project, and Life of PR is perfect for that. Number 34, You Heat Me Up, You Cool Me Down by King Cruel. King Cruel's live album is just amazing. Completely reimagined versions of already beloved songs, and the way the crowd noise is added, it just conveys his timeless, grubby, outsider energy. It's one of the best live albums I've ever heard. Number 33 33 is Nurture by Porter Robinson. Porter Robinson's music is definitely an acquired taste, but I personally love the bittersweet sentimentality and nostalgia of his latest project. Think Portal 2 soundtrack meets slice of life anime OST. Porter's style may not be the most unique ever. We've definitely heard this mix of processed female vocals, bombastic electronic sci-fi choruses, and drops. The overall warm, light-hearted tone, it's very familiar, but I've gotta say, Porter Robinson does it the best, and I'm glad he's still doing it. Number 32 is Skin by Joy Crooks. Skin may be Joy Crooks' first full-length project, but she has the voice and confidence of a much older artist. She's one of the best singer-songwriters I've heard from my generation. With her being just a year older than me, I can relate deeply to the themes of growing up and leaving adolescence and finding who you are in a world that seems completely out of control. I can't wait to hear what she does next. 31 is Bigger Than Life or Death by ESTG. I think ESTG is going to be the next rapper to blow up. He's big already. He's definitely one of the biggest out of Kentucky, but he has the factor to become nationally mainstream famous. He's got what it takes. He's been working for years, and Bigger Than Life or Death is by far his best project yet. It's smooth, Midwest production, top-notch features, and harsh, energetic bars. It's a great overall package, and I think he's just one or two projects away from breaking into the mainstream. Number 30 is Pray for Haiti by Mach Hami. Pray for Haiti is another standout release in the ever-growing subgenre of Midwest/East Coast rap featuring strict, harsh flows, slow beats, light on percussion, and heavy on tales from the gritty streets of the dozens of decaying post-industrial American cities that dot our country east of the Mississippi River. It's just another great album from Griselda, who are quickly taking over underground hip-hop. Number 29 is Roadrunner by Brockhampton. I'm a little confused about Roadrunner. I basically forgot about this album from the moment I made my glowing review until now. Even though I remember loving almost everything about it, I was crying my eyes out when I listened to this record for the first time. I just haven't listened to it in like 9 months. The poppy R&B production, the somber narrative with Joba's dad, the bangers, the features from Peggy and Danny Brown and Charlie Wilson, it was all so fun, so fresh from a group that I had almost given up on. At this point, I hope Brockhampton just take their praise and hang it up before they make something that's actually bad, because Roadrunner is a beautiful, touching masterpiece, but in my opinion, just like the Beatles' Let It Be, it doesn't even really make sense that this album exists for any reason other than the guys in the group being too scared to go out on their own. But just like Let It Be, Roadrunner is still a beautiful record. It just doesn't feel quite right. 28 is Hall of Fame by Polo G. I'm a huge fan of Polo G's songs, but his projects haven't always clicked with me until Hall of Fame. He's a very thoughtful lyricist, and his consistent exploration of how childhood trauma manifests and affects who we become as adults is one of my favorite characteristics of any rapper working today. Hall of Fame, as always, mixes his thoughtful and self-aware approach to emotions with hard-hitting drill raps. 27 is Freedom Boys by Fortitude Doug. Melodic tracks, bangers, Doug's amazing sing-songy flows and raspy tone, plus the unique Midwest production. Tracks like Free Woo, Rose Gold, Still Catching Cases, and even For the Gang sampling 80s hair rock. Fortitude Doug is about to be very big if he drops another project like this. He's one of the main reasons why Detroit has so much promise right now. 26 is Unfuckwittable by Babyface Ray. Another rising star out of Detroit, veteran rapper Babyface Ray's Unfuckwittable is his best and biggest project, and I can't imagine him going anywhere but up from here. Every single track on Unfuckwittable is laid back, nonchalant, and funny without being a parody of itself. Even the mix of Atlanta and Midwest production is unique. It's a great record to listen to if you've been thinking trap is getting boring, because it's definitely not. 25, Friends That Break Your Heart by James Blake. James Blake music has undergone a very specific and noticeable transformation over the last 10 years. It just keeps getting more and more listenable. Production feels like 80s pop, 90s singer-songwriter, and 2010s R&B all at the same time, with electric keyboards, Metro Boomin 808s, sparkly synths, and acoustic guitar all in the same package. James sings a series of vaguely conceptual songs about loneliness and the eternally complicated dynamics of friendship. Number 24 is God's Pee at State's End by Godspeed You Black Emperor. God's Pee is a story about accepting that while society might be broken, life must go on anyway, because at the end of the day, they've become one of the biggest post-rock bands ever while continuously predicting the apocalypse for 25 years straight. The record is full of dark, lonely guitars, ambiance, and the tense crescendos that make them who they are. Number 23 is Yasuke by Flying Lotus. Even after he pioneered his very own genre of hip-hop with classic projects like Cosmogramma and You're Dead, Flying Lotus is still pushing himself to explore yet more sounds. Despite also serving as the soundtrack for an anime, the project stands on its own at the same time. There are so many unique synths, percussion, and rhythms, it'd be a shame if you didn't hear Yasuke. Number 22 is A Martyr's Reward by Ka. Ka is probably my favorite living underground rapper. I've talked about this before, but there's something unique about his drumless beats, slow, quiet murmurs, and the way he paints his hometown of Brownsville in Brooklyn as a mythical place in its dark bleakness, reminiscent of ancient Greek stories of gods and monsters. Ka is a one-of-a-kind lyricist, and his work just keeps on getting better as he builds on this theme of biblical allegory and surrealist imagery. In his own words, Having nothing gave me everything. Number 21 is Conflict of Interest by Getz. Getz is a pretty legendary artist in the UK, at least I think so. I haven't been there to find out for myself, but Conflict of Interest is a very heady conceptual album that I just keep on coming back to, from the beautiful intro track to the grime sound mixed with piano, bass guitar, and strings, to the classy yet hard-hitting lyrics about fatherhood, family, and legacy that tell the story of one of my favorite UK rappers working today. Number 20 is Sometimes I Might Be Introvert by Little Simz. Another UK album. Sometimes I Might Be Introvert is Sim's fourth record and by far her best work yet. Little Simz has been a rapper's rapper for a couple of years now. She's definitely not mainstream yet, but even Kendrick Lamar has given her a shout out for her lyrical skill. Sometimes I Might Be Introvert has ambitious production and songwriting. It's a very big sounding album. Number 19 is Haram by Armand Hammer and The Alchemist. This record is a journey to the heart of America's rotten core as the empire crumbles before our very eyes. And it feels like Armand Hammer will continue to commentate and vent out all their frustrations until all there's left is the shells of empty buildings and trash can campfires. This is one of my favorite New York albums of the year, in a year full of amazing New York music. Number 18, Whole Lotta Red by Playboi Carti. I could talk about Whole Lotta Red and its impact on the music industry all day. I mean, I gave it a 9 out of 10 last year when it dropped, but at this point in its lifespan, it's kind of left the building for me. It's still an amazing album in terms of the risks Carti was willing to take, but I think we've almost assigned too much meaning to it. I'm glad Carti didn't just phone in Die Lit too, but at the end of the day, I think this album is definitely more of a talking point than something to listen to in my day-to-day. At the end of the day, I think Whole Lotta Red is way ahead of its time, and I think Carti is still one of the most important trailblazers in music today. So let's see what happens, but right now, I actually don't listen to it that much anymore. Number 17, Voice of the Heroes by Bibby and Durk. I've always loved and appreciated Baby and Durk's respective singing and rapping abilities, but I'm not sure I've heard a great project from either of them yet. Baby's last album was pretty good, but Voice of the Heroes really shows both of them at the top of their abilities. They complement each other really well. Durk sings, Baby raps, and maybe I'm corny, but I think this record genuinely tells an emotional story about perseverance and inner strength. The songs like Hats Off, Man of My Word, How It Feels, and That's Facts are my very favorites. To me, it's the best mainstream collab project since Kids See Ghosts. Number 16 is Tyron by Slowthai. Slowthai is another one of my favorite UK artists working today, and Tyron is his best, most personal project yet. After the politically motivated, conscious manifesto that was Nothing Great About Britain, Tyron is more focused than ever, and he's talking about his own story and the contents of his mind. It's a two-sided record, half bangers, half introspective. ADHD, Push, and Feel Away are deeply emotional, while 45 Smoke, Cancelled, and Play With Fire are memorable bangers. Tyron is a beautiful album, and I still listen to it to this day. Number 15 is Chemtrails Over the Country Club by Lana Del Rey. With a fluffier, softer, quieter sound than her previous work, Lana is still outlining the details of love and abandonment, but this time a little more detached than the crazed lover she was portraying in the past. With her previous work romanticizing failed relationships, misogyny, hopeless longing, American excess, and patriotism, Chemtrails is more minimal in its singer-songwriter sound with melodic guitar strumming, distant piano, and simple drums. In this way, her sound is so much simpler than it used to be and is definitely not going to reach the commercial heights of something like Ultraviolence or Born to Die. Personally, I think the way Lana is developing a minimal aesthetic is only continuing to strengthen my appreciation for her songwriting. Number 14 is Star-Crossed by Casey Musgraves. Casey Musgraves got pretty bad reviews from some critics, and this is a pretty corny album, but I thought it was great. Maybe it's just because I lived in rural Texas a couple years ago, but there really is something so deeply relatable and vulnerable about this record. It's pop country, it's kind of shallow and goofy, but I can't stop listening to it. It conveys the culture, the plain and simple honest language that makes Texas what it is. Plus the record's production is beautiful, full of sparkly sounds and deep echoey bass and guitars. It's by far Casey Musgraves' poppiest work, but I find it comforting to listen to just because of how upfront and straightforward her songwriting is. Number 13 is Happier Than Ever by Billie Eilish. Billie Eilish's second album is her most mature work yet. Obviously, her last one came out when she was 17. You grow pretty quickly at this age, especially when you accidentally become one of the biggest pop stars on earth. Happier Than Ever is that story. It's more refined, more mature, and on this album, Billie tells the tale of her youthful relationships and her journey to accept the life she's been thrown into. Getting Older is a beautiful record opener. There's so much interesting production with the choir on Goldwing, the jazzy sounds on Billy Bossa Nova, and the dark, sleazy Lost Cause. As always, Billie and her brother basically go all out on everything they make and will stop at nothing to chase the sound they have in mind. Overheated may be my favorite track Phineas has ever produced, with the spacey arpeggios that create an eerily wide soundscape. Even better than their debut, Billie and her brother are dead set on achieving legendary status before they're even of age to rent a car at the airport. Number 12 is Bo Jackson by Boldy James and The Alchemist. Boldy James is another amazing rapper coming out of Detroit, and Bo Jackson might be his best work yet. With vibrant psychedelic beats and and Boldy's ability to switch between passive and active voices during his tangential, rambling storytelling, it creates an overall mood that draws you in and takes you for a dark, abstract ride through the urban Midwest. As Alchemist cooks up psychedelic textures and Boldy details each and every one of his past sins in a way that makes us feel like we, the listeners, are the devils on his shoulder. Number 11 is Sound Ancestors by Madlib. Sound Ancestors somehow feels like a mix of Madlib's sample-based production and also like Damon Albarn of Gorillaz is stuck in purgatory trying to communicate through melodies at the same time. It's a pretty quiet, elusive album. It doesn't sound a whole lot like Madlib's most famous work. There's a lot of ambient and pop stuff going on here, but it really is a fascinating journey from start to finish. Instruments range from bass and drums to kalimba, organs, and electric pianos. It's hard to put a finger on what exactly Sound Ancestors is made of, what it sounds like, or where it comes from, but that's part of the appeal for sure. Imagine Gorillaz self-titled meets the Avalanches meets a 1960s symphonic depiction of some long extinct equatorial tribe that left behind bone instruments, like the soundtrack to the back room of a natural history museum. Sound Ancestors. Number 10, An Evening with Silk Sonic. Silk Sonic is a wonderfully effective neo-funk, neo-soul R&B record. It's just the right length with no filler tracks. It's genuinely one of the most fun albums to come out the entire year, with Anderson .Paak's raspy, hilarious one-liners and raw singing, and Bruno Mars' funny venting and incredible crooning. Their dynamic ended up being absolutely perfect, and I can't stop listening to Silk Sonic over and over again. There's not a single song I would take out from this project, no skips at all. It's just the absolute perfect execution of throwback instrumentation and modern musical sensibilities in one shiny little package. Number 9, Promises by Pharoah Sanders and Floating Point in the London Symphony Orchestra. This might be one of the stranger records on this list, but I can't stop listening to it. It's a mostly instrumental 9-track project full of drones, strings, and repetitious musical themes that conveys an overall air of mysteriousness. A lot of the feelings that this album projects, many of which are very distinct, are also hard to describe. Yet all the same, it ended up being one of my favorite records of the entire year, with harpsichords and bells and creaking wood and ambient sounds coming together in pursuit of melodic and harmonic freedom. Towards the end of movement 4, as Pharoah Sanders wordlessly hums and sings into the microphone, it feels so powerful, especially knowing that this is music coming from the mind of an 81-year-old artist who worked closely with John Coltrane and Ornette Coleman over 60 years ago. There's a lot of wisdom in this album, and I wouldn't miss it for anything. Number 8 is LP by JPEG Mafia. LP is just as confrontational and wild as Peggy's music has always been, but its production and writing is much better than his older stuff. Nothing against him, but LP is a huge upgrade in quality and listenability. He's clearly reached a very high level in his process, and the result is one of the best albums of the year. He's still funny, still caustic, and still rude. Just a huge upgrade all around. Number 7 is The Melodic Blue. Baby Keem is going to be a superstar. The Melodic Blue is just the first of many adventures we're going to hear him go on as he lives through new stories to tell, finds new sounds to play with, new flows, and establishes himself as one of the most creative artists coming out of Gen Z. The Melodic Blue is distinctively Baby Keem. It's funny and somber, and there are two distinct sides to his musical persona. One that wants to do right, and one that wants to live life as some sort of hip-hop superhero, driving fast and partying while he navigates the complicated moral landscape of fame as a 21-year-old rising star. It's a very personal album. I really feel like I got to know him over the course of the project, and I can't wait to hear what he makes next. Artists that can produce, think, write, and rap all at the same time at such a high level as Keem are very rare, and as he builds up his artistic inner world, the outside superstardom will grow with it. The Melodic Blue is just the beginning. Number 6 is Half God by Wiki. Wiki's only 27, but he's seen his hometown of New York City change a lot in his lifetime. When I was a kid growing up and my family lived in Brooklyn, I remember the city was very different than it is now, so I get it. In my own hometown, it became infested with yuppies over the years, and I remember when I was a teenager, my parents' landlord kicked us out of our house to subdivide the apartment into rental units for students. But at the same time, I packed up and moved out of the city I grew up in to move to New York and look for more opportunities. So when Wiki starts railing against yuppie transplants, saying, after all the schooling you did, don't know what community is, I feel both sides of the story. This is a masterpiece of storytelling from an artist who has a lot to say. Plus, Navy Blues production hits hard as always as they come together to stake their claim as two of the best artists in New York's underground today. Think Earl Sweatshirt production meets slow tie vocals and political thoughts. It's great, and Wiki needs to make more music. Number 5 is By the Time I Get to Phoenix by Injury Reserve. For the longest time, I looked at By the Time I Get to Phoenix like Pandora's box. Just knowing what it was about, I was scared of what it might sound like. Listening to someone grapple with unexpected death isn't something I'm comfortable with, and from what I did listen to off this record, I was pretty scared of it. The opener, Outside, especially kind of tore me apart. Richie's lyrics are flat out scary as he rants and raves over a building arpeggio and noise. Once I finally dived into By the Time I Get to Phoenix, I found that it was was even more hellish than I thought. Instrumentals are chaotic and harsh and noisy and discordant, down to the stereo imaging as tracks flip between channels and destroy your internal balance. Ultimately, By the Time I Get to Phoenix feels like a distraught reckoning with PTSD. It's like the group is reliving the pain of losing grogs over and over and over. They're stuck in the loop of negative thoughts, painful regrets, and memories. And that opening track especially sounds like a nightmare that follows you into reality as you wake up in a cold sweat looking for something that isn't even there. He says, let's get this out in the open over and over. There's nothing to get out in the open. There's nothing there. It's pure fear. It's a terrifying record, and even to this day, I can barely keep my headphones on during certain tracks. If that doesn't make it a powerful statement, I don't know what would. By the Time I Get to Phoenix is a masterpiece, but at the same time, I don't know how much I'll be able to listen to it casually in the future. I hope at least that the guys of Injury Reserve are feeling more at peace than they sound. Number 4, We're All Alone in This Together by Dave. Psychodrama was great, but this is even better. Dave is an amazing storyteller. He touches on the experience of being a second-generation immigrant in the UK, which isn't something I can understand, but the experience of I really do feel for. He delves into his soul to tell stories with a level of sincerity most artists just don't try for anymore. He boasts and brags and breaks down all at the same time, but none of it is patronizing. This isn't Joyner Lucas. We're All Alone in This Together speaks to feelings we can all relate to, and best of all, Dave's just getting started. He's going to be a legend before long. Like I said, there really isn't an American equivalent of Dave. For some reason, American artists just can't match this level of self-awareness, but it really is moving how he's able to examine himself and the world around him with such astounding honesty. One of the most touching moments on the record is the soundbite with his mom crying while she recalls what it was like to be homeless with 3 kids after his father was deported. You don't want to miss this record. It's got so much replay value and so much meaning. Number 3 is Call Me If You Get Lost. We all know Tyler's music has only gotten more and more free and uninhibited over time. Ever since Flower Boy, and really ever since Wolf, he's been on a journey to make the most of his sound and writing. His albums have just been getting more and more complex and conceptual year after year. Now, I loved Wolf. Cherry Bomb was a miss. Flower Boy was great, but looking back, I don't think I listened to it that much. Igor, I didn't really love, but Call Me If You Get Lost is Tyler's best work yet. The beats are impeccable. Tyler's songwriting is his best. DJ Drama killed it, and the guest features are amazing. Tyler is turning into not just a great producer, but an executive producer at the same time. A 42 Doug and Youngboy singing, ballads, crooning, I never would have imagined. I know Tyler's going to go completely off the beaten path again for his next record, but this album is just so straightforward and fun. I'm happy he made it, and it's one of the best packages of the entire year. Number 2, To Hell With It by Pink Pantheress. Pink Pantheress music matters a lot to me for 2 reasons. One, because she's the first true artist to blow up off TikTok, in my opinion. She really matches the spirit of that platform while also making standalone songs. And number 2, because she's one of the first Gen Z auteurs. Maybe this sounds dumb, but her music has every characteristic of general Gen Z media consumption, but it's still full of meaning and intention. 60-second songs that take you on the shortest emotional roller coaster of your entire life. Everything is filtered through a layer of irony as her non-specific mix of pop chords, drum and bass percussion, and deeply layered, stacked vocals create a generally soft yet noticeable disconnect between the listener and the singer. The resulting effect makes To Hell With It my second favorite album of the year. She's one of the youngest artists on this list, the closest to my own age, and ultimately it makes the record feel like a friend. So many of the conversations she has in her head on this record, I've had them with myself already. Just for me, Pain, Reason, and Passion, they're my favorite songs from the project. It's an unforgettable project. I think everyone should hear it because in my mind, Pink Pantheress is carrying the torch for internet music today. Number 1 is Donda by Kanye West. How do I declare an album the best of the entire year? I mean, Donda just won't leave my head. There are a few things I think it did better than anyone else. First of all, the rollout. Kanye is still pulling off the biggest album rollout of the entire year, 18 years into his career. His ability to turn unfinished records into mesmerizing yet frustrating events is unmatched. Second, production. The record is perfectly produced. It's like Life of Pablo meets Jesus is King in the best way possible. And third, features. Kanye is a wizard. He got every single relevant rapper today. All of his friends, all of the artists he helped grow and watched mature, they're all on here and they're all at their very top form. Weeknd's verse on Hurricane is breathtaking. Baby's verse is one of his best ever. Don Toliver, Cardi, Fivio Foreign with the best feature of the year. Andre 3000 with bars that can make you cry. His writing was so good I feel blessed just to hear him speak. Vori on Jonah with one of the best lines I've ever heard, repeated until the tears are in free fall. Have I mentioned this album makes me feel emotional? There's just something so powerful, timeless, and empowering about hearing your very favorite artists in the whole world come together to appreciate where they are and what they have, while acknowledging just how hard the journey has been at the same time. I think I see some of myself in the story of Donda. We all do. Sometimes you have to sit back and appreciate how insane it is that you're here at all. And I've never heard an artist do that better than Kanye and his friends on Donda. In his own words from Life of the Party, to think I could have almost died. He's here, but he's not. Kanye lives in his head in little pieces of the many lives he's experienced so far. We all do. Dirk misses his brother. Baby spends his alone time missing his friends and reckoning with the choices he's made. Andre misses his mom, who's long dead. Vori wonders why he spent his darkest moments alone and had no one to walk him through the struggles, while Fivio is just shocked he gets to be here at all after everything he's been through. We all have these moments, and that's the story of Donda. To hear so much vulnerability on one album is amazing, and I just keep coming back to it. It's a record about appreciating everything you have, which is something that we so often completely forget to do. I'm glad Kanye made this record. It's one of the few pieces of music I can genuinely relate my life to and feel an emotional attachment to. So that's why Donda was my album of the year. And speaking of Donda and that personal growth, I can't lie, everyone who's watching this video probably knows 2021 was a hard year. A lot of my videos weren't good, and that was because my life wasn't good. I didn't take care of my mental and physical health until about 2 or 3 months ago when I woke myself up and I decided to make a change for the better. I'm doing really well now, but for most of 2021, I was actively sabotaging my own success. I don't know why I was doing it. It's something that I'll probably not understand for years to come. But music has always been a source of strength for me, and I feel like this year especially, I saw so many of my own favorite artists learn new things about themselves and grow as people through their music. It had a profound effect on me and how I perceive my own potential to grow as a person. Maybe it sounds corny, but I really do see a lot of artists as role models, and this year was so good for music in general. I can't wait to hear what next year holds. Thanks as always for watching my videos, and I'll talk to you all soon. I hope everyone has a great new year. This has been Volksgeist. Thank you for watching.